Obviously this is a show for introverts,
Yeah.
and I'm curious. You said that you were an extrovert early on.
Yes.
At what point did you become an introvert, and then what have you found about being an introvert that could be beneficial to my audience as it pertains to dating and relationships?
Yeah, good question, man. So basically, like I was an extrovert, I was a social butterfly. That gave me energy, right? Because the true definition of introvert extrovert isn't whether you're social, it's what recharges you. Is it being alone or is it being around people? And true extroverts, they can be around a pack of like 100 people in like a screaming stadium or like a, or even a small group, and they'll just get charged from it. They don't need to go home and have time alone. Versus introverts, it's like that would drain them. And so for me, as a young man, I was an extrovert. I was a professional DJ. I loved busy cities and busy intersections and busy events and club nights where I'm the center of the attention. Lots of people coming up to me and stuff. And I got sick when I was like 30. I got bit by a tick, just like on my arm or whatever, and on a surf trip, and I got Lyme disease. And that's neurological in nature. And so it basically like created concussion symptoms for me, like headaches, sensitivities to light and sound and motion, stuff like that. So my nervous system was being beat up by this bacteria. And so all of a sudden I was really sensitive, and that also applied to people. So like I kept, for the first couple of years of being sick, like going out with people thinking that would, and going to busy environments thinking that would help me feel better, and it would leave me feeling drained. Like I could feel the energy draining on my body. And so I don't know exactly why that happened, whether it's just like the neurological damage or it's like just needing to reserve energy, not having capacity for social stuff. But like it definitely changed. And it was like a couple year long process of me learning what it means to be introverted, and that's okay. And so now I'm the kind of guy who'll be at a party for like an hour. I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. And I'll duck out. Or like busy intersections, busy cities. I'm like, no, thank you. Small town, I'm good with the quiet now. I think the hardest part for me is being somebody who felt like I was always doing the wrong thing, feeling insecure and stuff. Like I felt like it was a bad thing that I wasn't able to be social. And it took me a while to just be okay with, no, it's beautiful. It's cool that like, it's okay that I want to go home and be alone right now instead of be at this party. That doesn't make me a loser.
Did you find a different form of communication was then necessary with the women that you dated as a result of now being introverted? Or like in terms of like whatever you're like before, for example, you had a need to go out and be around people, but as an introvert, obviously you don't need that as much. And so if you're dating women, for example, who maybe are a little more extroverted, how did that affect your communication with them to where you were able to make that work?
Yeah, so one-on-one, it didn't really bother me. Like I'm still okay with that, unless somebody just has a personality that just really grinds on me, and then I find it draining. But otherwise, like most people, one-on-one, I'm pretty good. And so I think for me, where it popped up wasn't in the actual dating interactions. It was more around like planning dates and stuff, like where we go, what we do. Like I just do better sitting around a bonfire with somebody, or like going for a walk along the water, or getting a tea in the back of a quiet coffee shop or something, versus what I used to do, which is, let's go to this busy restaurant or this busy nightclub, or, go walk this busy city. So for me, it was just about that, like strategically putting myself in situations that would not drain me. And then also, this wouldn't happen in dating initially, like in getting to know somebody phase, but like once we were kind of hanging out more and maybe going on trips together, or maybe spending full weekends together, like I'd have to, during the days, like sometimes set boundaries. Hey, I'm like talked out. I just want to go read a book over here. It's not you. And I had to learn that people took it the wrong way. And I used to take it the wrong way as a younger man. Yeah. If I didn't communicate, hey, it's not you, I'm still having fun, I'm just an introvert, I sometimes get overstimulated and hit a bit of a wall with talking, and I need to I'm just going to go in there and chill for a bit. That'll recharge me. And then later today or tomorrow, I'll be super chatty again. So I had to learn to over communicate that so that it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I did find that because I would go on, like, I learned to just go on first dates, and on date one, I'm mentioning that I'm an introvert and what that means and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. But I found that sometimes if you give the expectation of that even if there might be a little pushback later on, it's not nearly as much as if you're trying to fake being an extrovert and then all of a sudden you want to switch up. And then that looks more suspicious to the woman, because they're like, but wait, you wanted to do all this. Now you're saying you need alone time. And now you're saying you don't want to do this and that. And it's like, what the heck? But giving them expectation in advance, it's like, oh, he's just an introvert. He just needs some time alone. Or, oh, it's not, I'm not going to take it personally if he doesn't call or text today, or doesn't ever get back to me right away because he already explained, whatever.
Exactly. And like, I found that to be really useful in dating, is to kind of more be transparent about who I am up front. Obviously, focus on having fun in the beginning, because you want to create positive emotional associations, going really deep really quickly, which is what I used to do, talking about all my issues and stuff. good way to build connection quickly, but not really attraction. And
Sure.
so I would advise younger guys or guys that are dating or early on to get into those kinds of topics, not what you're struggling with, but like ask questions like, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you more anxious, or are you more avoidant on the attachment spectrum? That's another phenomenal book to read, by the way, if you haven't yet. Attached.
Okay.
That is, besides No More Mr. Nice Guy, like the most useful heuristic for evaluating relationships I've ever found. Attachment styles are very well studied in the psychology, and so like basically, depending on how you experience intimacy growing up, will define how you react to intimacy in relationship later on, which makes sense, right? And they found that like either you experienced intimacy in like a healthy way and you're secure, you're like the middle of the spectrum, right? Insecure people, they can love, they don't ruminate on it, they don't feel scared when times get tough. They're just kind of like, they can show up fully, and that's only 7% of the population. So like these people are typically like a little bit more rare. They're people that end up in relationships earlier in life and just have smooth relationships. Then there's anxious, which is me. People that experience intimacy as hot and cold. So I felt very close to my dad, but then he was very disapproving a lot of the time. So there's a lot of pain there. And so I'm needy for it. I lean in, I ruminate, I like chase, and if things aren't going well, then I think about it. And then there's avoidance on the other side, which they experience intimacy as being painful and so hurtful. And so when they get into a relationship and things get tough, or they start feeling too much, they back away. And the tragic part about all this is that typically anxious attachment styles are attracted to avoidance and vice versa. And so like one person leans in, but then the other person leans away, and then and then this person leans in more and they get more anxious, and this person gets more avoidant, more ghosty, more whatever. And then that kept happening to me over and over again, learning about the attachment styles and where you sit on that spectrum. Now I'm with somebody secure, and that makes me less anxious. And so I show up more secure. So that's a good fit. Both can date secure. It's just not great to date each other. And so asking these questions early on in dating, especially as an introvert, is something I would encourage, because that really helped me evaluate, is this person actually a good fit for me?
Okay.
So I like your advice. I really like your advice around, bring up the introvert thing early on.
Yeah, I just made it because I was in a relationship for like 6 years, whereby early on I didn't do that. And there were a lot of hurt feelings later on when I would say things like, "Oh, sometimes I need my alone time," which means I might want to go to a hotel by myself. And then she got offended, like, "Well, why would you do that without me?" And I'm like, I don't know. I just would, like,
Yeah.
like I'm looking like it's no big deal. She's like, "That means you're trying to get away from me." And it's like having to explain those concepts. And I didn't think about, like, growing up, my brother was very much extroverted. I was introverted. And I think had we known what those concepts were, it would have caused a lot less hurt when he wanted to hang out. And I was like, we're in the same house. I don't need more energy than that. Why are you trying to hang out with me? Like, if I'd understood that, I could have made myself more available and not taken it personally. He could have given me some time to be to myself and not taking that so personally. So all those things really do help when you actually know that stuff.
Yeah, it helps. It helps so much when dating or with family relationships or friendships. It's like, for me, it's like the learning about boundaries, attachment styles, like what we're talking about, the love languages. There's a few like good, useful frameworks that I found too that have really helped me in the dating process, especially as an introvert. And I used to feel kind of insecure about being an introvert, but I learned that introverts actually rule the world. Like, you see extroverts because they're flashy. You see a lot of them out there, and it's like, oh wow, that guy looks successful. But like the really successful people, to be successful, it requires a lot of strategy. And strategy requires a lot of like sitting with your thoughts and feelings. And a lot of extroverts avoid themselves and their comfortable feelings by being social. And so it's actually can be a handicap. I have that problem sometimes when I feel, or when I was younger, especially when I felt like anxious or upset about something, I would just go out and be social. It's a great distraction. Make me feel good, get a little dopamine hits, especially with women. But the reality is the introverts are at home, like feeling about their life, thinking about their life, writing about their life, reading about life. And it's like, that's what leads to more, better strategic decisions. I found like the space that introverts take, that's really healthy,
Well, it's so funny because I'm in LA in Hollywood, and a majority of actors and actresses and musicians are actually introverts, which confuses people because they'll see like, but they're on red carpets and talking this and that. But it's like, think about how much work has to go into an acting role. They got to spend all this time alone and like it to be able to research, to be able to get into character.
Yeah.
And you don't get that being an extrovert.
Yeah.
So they do all this introvert work to then go out there to do this thing, but then that gets them all this extrovert attention that they don't actually want. That's why a lot of them have been having these, you'll have people that they go crazy, or they'll suddenly, have like episodes where they go, out of mind or whatever. And it's because they don't really want all that extra attention.
No.
It just their tendency to be an introvert makes them excel at the thing that the world's going to see.
That's really interesting. I thought about that. I've thought about that in musicians before, because I know some really successful musicians, and like, yeah, think about what it takes to be a good guitarist. You sit there for 10 hours a day by yourself, noodling around or like researching stuff. I didn't even think about it as far as actors. That's true, isn't it? That even actors, like, it's a lot of reading scripts, and it's a lot of like practicing certain gestures or practicing certain ways of showing up. And it's a lot of introverted activities. You're right. And honestly, to be in our culture, like, to be a specialist is rewarded, right? If you're really good at something, you're going to get rewarded for it. And to be a specialist, you need to put 10,000 hours into it. And you're not going to get that 10,000 hours if you're out like I was at the bar, like, chatting everybody up just because, it feels good. So there's a lot of benefits to being an introvert.
Yeah, indeed. And especially in relationships, like if you're able to, like, I know I spent the years I wasn't dating, I spent studying psychology and how men and women interact and how women take things in the world and relationships and stuff like that, to where now in my 30s I've been able to really show up and be the guy that I need to be. But I also have all these tools of like how to do conflict resolution and how to listen and how to be a better communicator. Like all those things are already there because I spent all that time by myself when I didn't have anybody looking up all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so really, and that's the thing that introverts can do, but also like, extroverts, any man that wants to be good at a relationship should really take the time or find the time to study those concepts, because outside of just, these lovey-dovey feelings, it's like, great, but when they get with you, what other things are going to make the mechanics of that work? And if you don't have those skills and you don't have something to go to be able to help you, if you are lacking some of those skills, then you prove to be a detriment to yourself and your relationship.
Yeah, it's like the brakes on the car, right? It's like you can ignore that if you want, but it's at your own peril. It's like, there's maintenance, general maintenance required, and emotional and self-awareness maintenance, and is part of that. How to navigate situations strategically, and so that's why these things are so great. And I also think that the introvert thing is really, I don't know, like it doesn't, they're like being masculine and introverted. It's presented as though they're opposed, but they're not actually. Like some of the most masculine guys I know are guys that just sit there and listen, and they don't say much, or they do take care of themselves. They take a lot of time to themselves. Like I know some really successful masculine guys that are introverts, and I actually, having become an older man, and I feel like I'm becoming a bit more mature now, I actually like those personalities better than the super chatty ones, the ones that are saying all the right things and talking a lot. I'm always like, what are you trying to hide, or what are you trying to sell me here? Like you're putting on a bit of a show here, versus the guy who's just sitting there completely comfortable with himself, okay being quiet, okay stepping out. Like I had a friend who, like, he'll go to parties and he won't say bye to anybody. He'll just leave, even like small parties of like 4 or 5 people. Yeah. And I ask him why, and he's like, because I got tired and they're having fun, and there's no sense in me going around and interrupting everything and going, bye guys, And I just thought that was such a great perspective, such a healthy perspective,
Yeah. Well, because you can make your mark easier, honestly, when you're, because I used to be the guy at parties. We used to throw, back when I had roommates, we used to throw parties every weekend. Yeah. And again, introvert guy, but I'm at home, so it's whatever. But we have a bunch of, guys come through, and a bunch of women come through and hang out, and this is that. And I'd kind of be the guy in the corner, just kind of quiet, observing things, looking at myself. And inevitably, like, the hottest girl at the party would come want to talk to me, because they're like, what's with that guy over there? Like, why isn't he saying so much?
Yeah.
They start talking. Then they realize I have a personality. I'm interactive. I'm talking. I'm having a good time. And it's like, what a surprise. But I got some of the best dates out of just being the introverted guy at the party, versus trying to be the guy that's all talkative and all flashy, because that guy can have a bunch of women talk, but he's not getting the main one everybody's trying to go after.
Yeah, I can second that. Yeah, I've noticed that in myself too. It's like the nights where I was out and just having fun with my friends and focused on that, and just like hanging out, chill, just being wherever I'm at, even if my friends were to leave the table or leave the scenario and I'm just sitting there alone. Like typically, women can smell that. They're like, hey, that guy isn't trying to hunt. He hasn't just escaped from the cock farm. He's not out in the hunt, like thirsty for anything he can get his hands on. That guy's just having a good night. That's attractive,
So how's being an introvert because I mean, obviously your girlfriend knows you're an introvert. So
Yeah.
how's that? What effect has that had in the relationship?
It surprisingly doesn't cause a lot of conflict because she's in a stage of her life where she's like really getting into the personal growth stuff. So she's reading a lot and she's journaling a lot, and she's emotionally mature enough to like understand what that means for me, that I'm an introvert and that I need downtime and to not take it personally. So she does go and get her extrovert time out with a friend. She went out with the two girlfriends last night. They went to a craft brewery or whatever, and they like had a good time, and there were lots of people there and it was loud and noisy, and like I don't really want to do that. So she does it with other people.
And I'm pretty sure she probably like appreciates that you're not the guy that's an introvert and also wants her to stay home and also is going to get jealous if she goes out without you, because that can be a burden also.
Yeah, that's just controlling, right? Like I'm a confident introvert. You know, I'm like I'm good with myself. Like I know that if something were to happen, then that'd probably be the end of the relationship, and that would be her loss. And obviously that'd devastate me too. But like, yeah, I'm not a jealous person, even with all the cheating. I just feel because I address the self-worth issues and like how I feel about myself. I realize I'm a catch now, and the way I live my life is pretty cool. And some other woman would love that if this girl doesn't. And so, yeah, I think that's more like a self-worth, confidence, and lack. I've cried out and talked out a lot of my insecurities, to be honest. So even as an introvert, like when she's out and about, occasionally I'll feel a little jealous or something, or like a little worried that something might happen. But in general, like, and I'll just tell her, hey, like she communicates so well. I'll be like, hey, just so you know, just so I don't build resentment or whatever. Like when you were saying you're out a bunch last night and like one of your ex-boyfriends was around, like that's totally cool because I get you guys didn't date for long and whatever, but like it still made me feel a little insecure. And she'll be like, oh, totally get it. Yeah, it's fine. There were like 10 people there, you know, it's all good. She'll reassure me, and that's all I need in those moments. So I think that really speaks to how important it is to find an emotionally intelligent partner, because as an introvert with somebody who just like rejects that and it's hassling you to come out and be in busy environments and like giving you a hard time with you when you're not, and then you're sitting at home knowing she's upset at you and out with friends, it's like that's not good, you know.
Yeah, definitely not.
That's not a good dynamic for anybody involved. Yeah,
I do want to ask real quick because you brought this up. I do want to ask. So, as a guy that went through, multiple cheating situations, that is a situation where a guy could easily get into that space where he's like, I just don't trust any women, or they just always get that ping of like, well, it seems good now, but whatever. How do you work past that? How are you able to get to a place where you can be confident, or just be like, well, that was those women. I'm not going to assume that's going to be the next woman that I date. That's a hard transition for a lot of guys to do.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And we see both men and women doing this when they're hurt like this. They say the other group is the problem, right? And that's very human. You see that politically. You see that in the States. You see that in countries. That's why wars start and stuff, you know? And you see a lot of men's movements right now, men going their own way, incel, red pill, all this stuff. It's just a bunch of men that have been hurt and they don't know what to do with that. And they just like are like, screw women. I don't want to screw women. You know, it's just like, and so how I recovered from that was first I had to release the emotions of the experience. So I luckily by this point, like for the most part, I was in men's groups, or I was in environments where guys are like, you need to feel that stuff. Like you just got cheated on. That sucks. Feel it. So, you know, I'd have a lot of like sad movie nights with myself and like cry or whatever when in the sad moment of the movie, because I couldn't cry on my own at that point. And then reading about learning about what happened and why it happened, and dissecting it in my journal and reading books and talking to coaches or therapists, you know, and then that ultimately led me to the place where, you know, which is just one of those universal truths where it's like everybody's trying the best they can with the resources they have access to. So if somebody cheated on me, it's not really about me. It's more about where they're at and their emotional intelligence and their communication abilities, because a lot of the time it's just they weren't willing to tell me what they were actually feeling in the relationship. They felt trapped or they felt pressure and they just like ejected or whatever it might have been. So that was realizing that there isn't one, like, yes, men are similar and women are similar in a lot of ways, but like I can't say that about all women, that all women are cheaters or that all women are untrustworthy or that all women when they drink are gonna, you know, end up in somebody else's bed, because it's just not true. It's not even close to true, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's just false. And so I chose to instead focus on how like I could try to be with people that were healthier for me and like own my side of that picture, Why did I keep being attracted to these people? What was it about them? Well, it was about that they were really sexy, and that made me feel better about myself. Okay, why don't I address the problem that's driving this behavior then about not feeling good about myself in the first place? Because that seems to be me leading me towards, you know, that seems to be leading me towards choosing these unhealthy partners. And then just like learning, slowly journaling, but the flags, like what early in these relationships showed me that they were didn't have enough integrity or emotional intelligence to like talk to me about that stuff, you know?
Hmm.
And there were clear flags there that were obvious, you know? Okay, so I learned about that. And I went from victim, oh, this sucks. And I didn't stay on the victim train and go into like red pill land where it's like women are the problem. Oh, they're all like this. Instead, I jumped off the victim and I went to the self empowerment, which is like, how can I stop this from happening in the future? You know, how can I learn from this? How can I use this to find a better partner? If you want to be bitter about it and hunker down and never talk to women again and hate on them in online forums and stuff, like that's just gonna hurt you, you know, man. That's a pretty sad existence. Like that's a pretty sad day to day way to think and feel. Like I want to feel positive about people. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I know lots of great people in my life who aren't like that. Like I had friends like that, family members who were just lovely. They were in integrity. They've never cheated on anybody. They're good at communicating. So like, why do I keep men and women, you know? So why do I keep running into women that are like being avoidant, essentially, like being poor communicators and then cheating on me?
Hmm.
Maybe I have something to do with that, right? So I don't know. Yeah, there's no blanket statement. Women are, anytime people say women are, men are,
Hmm.
I start to like, I immediately have a bit of a knee jerk gag reflex now where I'm like, usually that's not true. It's people are so individual, you know?
I just never understood how people could be like, especially for guys that'll, they go into red pill land and say, like, all women are this and they're horrible, this is that. But then they're also in the same breath saying, and I'm just gonna just try to get one to hook up with, and that's it. Or I'm gonna still like, it's like you're hating on women, but then you also want women. Like how you do those two realities in your head and then get results that you want. I just never understood why people would do that.
Yeah, well, it's a good question, right? And it's one of the things about humans that is so both funny and terrible is like, and I have a friend who's like a bit of a philosopher and he got a tattoo of a face on his shoulder and it's half man, half monkey. And what it symbolizes is that we're really just monkeys flailing away against ourselves. We have this old primitive brain and then we've got this, prefrontal cortex that's like logic and so we can have opposing thoughts and feelings going on, and so for a lot of people, they got hurt by something and they get self-righteous about it and they're like I had all the right, especially after the last one, like I was having surgery and my girlfriend ended up with somebody else on that day. Like I have all the right to be all bitter about that, but like
Right.
I think that that's a natural response, right? But I think the problem is like I stay in that because it's safe. They don't want to risk pain again, so they hold on to that victim narrative and that's their view of the world, that's their lens. Meanwhile, we're all hardwired to want intimacy. We can't get away from that. There's very, very few people that can live in isolation. There are that are like way out in the wilderness by themselves, but like most people need to feel closeness. Most people need affection. Like that's the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's been well studied. So I understand how guys can have those opposing things, right? They're very emotionally charged about a topic. You see this with women too that have been raped and stuff, or domestically abused. Like they're very charged anti-men. It's like because they've been really hurt, right? But then they still date
Yeah.
men. It's because they want to feel close to somebody, and that's a beautiful thing. And so it's realizing that it's trying to work through the uncomfortable feelings of what happened to you. That's where the gold is. That a lot of people, especially these days, aren't doing. It's easy to blame people on the internet or blame this other group, instead of like working through your feelings. Like it sounds terrible, but like a lot of these women that are really against men, or a lot of these men that are really against women, it's like, yeah, it's terrible that thing that happened to you. But I wonder, like, how have you taken the responsibility? Like, you're still responsible for part of what happened. How did you put yourself in that situation?
Yeah.
Why were you drawn to that? What is it about your background and upbringing and parents that like made you seek that? And then how are you dealing with the residual emotions? Are you just going to be a bitter person for the rest of your lives and spit that out? Or are you going to try to like resolve that on your own, let out some of those emotions, release them, and then become a loving, trusting person again?
Yeah. So I think they spend their lives with that when that kind of thing happens, like feeling the feels of it and wanting like the sympathy, which again, it's a horrible thing. So people should feel sympathetic towards you. But
Yes.
again, on the day to day, people don't care. So it's like you have to be the one. It's like, okay, this person did this thing horrible. I could spend my life saying how horrible they were and how awful they were, or I could like get my help to work through this stuff to get to where, because if I do want a relationship, I can't keep having these triggers that result in me acting out on these other men that aren't doing anything.
Yeah,
And the same
exactly.
is true for men too. Like if you had a woman that did whatever, it's like, well, yeah, again, sorry that happened to you, but now you got to do the work if you still want a relationship, because the next one that comes along is not going to stick around to be berated on account of something some other woman did.
Yeah, and if you just wanna be happy too, it's like, yeah, to talk about selfishly, it's like, yeah, if you wanna be in a healthy relationship after that, that's gonna be very difficult to do if you're super spiteful towards the sex you're trying to date. And also, like, it's just not very fun. It doesn't feel good day to day to walk around with that much, anger and rage and sadness. Like I like walking around and having playful, lovely interactions with people, trying to come into every interaction I have without judgment and to just see them as a beautiful person on their own beautiful journey and just have fun with that. Try to learn something, even if they're homeless and nonsensical. It's like
Yeah.
appreciating their place in the world and that they've come into my experience. That's really hard to do though. I want to feel good. I only have so many days on this earth. Like I want to enjoy my time here. That's like basically impossible to do if you're feeling really spiteful about half the
Yeah.
people in the world. you
Also,
know?
question. So
Yeah.
a guy that's working through that stuff so he can get better with women. How can he start to be aware of when certain triggers pull up? Like say he's working on himself and
Yeah.
he had stuff happen, and then now all of a sudden he's dating a woman. It's great, and then something happens, and it's like he starts to have that reaction based on the previous thing he was with. How can
Yeah.
the guy notice that stuff's happening so he won't like outright just ruin a good thing?
It's a great question, right? And that's the first step is like, how do you notice these things because they're unconscious? And so like the goal really in a lot of therapy is to like just get your foot in the door, right? You're not expecting to blow open the whole door and understand all of it and just never have that reaction again. But it's like get a little bit of time in between the feeling that you experience and then how you usually react, right? It's like, oh, I've got a headache. I want to go jerk off to porn. Oh, my girlfriend said this. I'm gonna like, you know, get angry now. Like the goal is to just put a little space in there, right? And so what I learned is that the stronger the emotion that you feel, especially if it's like disproportionately a large reaction, like an uncalibratedly large reaction for the situation you're in, that's a gift because what it's showing you is that you're not actually upset about the thing that's right in front of you. That just probably reminds you of something else you went through before that was painful,
Mm,
picking at that wound. So for example, like I make a ton of like dark jokes about all sorts of different topics with my friends and that's good, very cathartic for us. But when somebody makes a joke about when I find when if I stumble across somebody that's cheating on their partner, because I have pain there, I will have a disproportionately large reaction. I want to like shake the guy or the gal and be like, you can't do that, like that's not cool. You don't know what it's like being on the other end of that. But I realize that that's my own inner turmoil that I need to like deal with. And so I try to manage that. And so, but it's a gift. It's these strong feelings and these strong reactions, these triggers, as you say, they're showing you where you're still holding on to pain. The nervous system holds on to emotions. It's just a default of our body. Any good massage therapist, will tell you that a lot of their clients will cry when they get a massage because it's just releasing energy. That's it. So it's about getting those feelings out wherever you can, so that you can communicate in like a beautiful, loving way. You start to learn that when you're triggered, that's actually the gift. It's like that's the window of opportunity where you actually step. So the actual how to of how I do that is anytime I'm triggered, like above a normal response, right? Like if I get cut off in traffic, if I feel a little frustrated, that's appropriate, that's normal, right? Whatever. But if I get really upset about something or whatever, instead of just doing the thing I usually do, what I'll go is I'll step away and I'll just breathe.
mm.
Not to try to calm myself down, but just to hang out with those feelings, get curious about it. What am I feeling? Where am I feeling in my body? What does this remind me of from my past? When else have I felt this in my life? Like, because when you do that, all of a sudden other stuff starts to come up. And you realize that it's not actually this thing you're feeling, this stuff's already in you, whether you like it or not. And what I learned, and I learned this later in my life thus far, I wish I learned it earlier, is that if I sit with that and I let it out, the next time that I find myself in that situation, I'll be a lot less triggered in it because there's this pressure cooker, this little ball of sadness or anger wanting to explode out, you know? And so I'll literally like let's say on this phone call, if you said something that really upset me, or I got some bad news about something, and it was within a topic that I typically get triggered around, I'll literally just go sit down on the couch. If I'm in a cafe, I'll go to the bathroom and sit in the toilet with my clothes on. I'll just breathe. I'll be like, oh wow, yeah, I feel it in my chest. Oh, I feel those crying tingles coming up a little bit. I actually feel this right now because I've been pushing really hard at work and I haven't been taking care of myself, and I can feel the tension in my neck, you know? And if I do that for a few minutes, I sometimes will start to cry or I'll start to feel angry. And that's the healing move. That's getting it out. That's clearing out the pressure cooker in the well, you know? So that's how I've been able to reduce these triggers. It's chasing women for validation, addictive tendencies like food or porn, you know, feeling low about myself. It's just like I step away and I breathe into it. And if I'm just hanging out and friendly with those feelings, welcoming to those feelings, and I don't judge myself how they come out, then over time I'm less and less triggered.
It's like, it seems like such a simple exercise, and yet so many guys don't have like these tools or even know these things to do that could allow them to even just sit with their emotions and really assess what the things they're feeling are, what's causing those feelings, and then how to actually deal with something in the moment versus like how they were programmed to this point to do some stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's completely foreign to them. And also there's good reason why people don't get into this stuff. Like 99% of people in the world aren't having these conversations. They're not reading these books. They're not they're not like working on themselves because it's really uncomfortable. Like these feelings that come up, you know, especially when you haven't let yourself cry. Like I went 10 years without crying, you know? Like, so the idea of sitting there and letting yourself cry then, and these feelings that are very intense, they feel like they're going to overwhelm you, and you get scared. Am I always going to feel like this? Hey, if I let myself feel low, am I going to be depressed? You know, those are normal feelings. These are normal things a lot of guys express when they're starting to wade into exploring their feelings. And it's like, but that's not how the body works. It's actually just like the body holds on to emotions unless you let them out. We're like built to like have a situation and then feel that thing in the moment, right? So if you have an experience with your parents where they like hit you or something, as humans, we're supposed to like express that. Like, I'm angry about that. Oh, I feel like that's sad in the moment. If we do, then there'll be none of that sitting around or floating around our bodies later, you know? But if our parents didn't let us do that, or if the guy at work didn't let you do that, or that partner you had didn't let you do that, then that energy gets just like gets stuck in the nervous system, essentially.
Okay.
And so basically, like, that's true. That's the truest definition of trauma, is like, you know, you just didn't get to express that energy in the moment. So we do want to, as men, we do want to become more emotional. It's just not less reactive, you know? Yeah. Like I express anger with the punching bag. Like that's good. You know, I cry about things that are appropriate quite a bit now. And that's great because it's continually clearing out that stuff. But, you know, as a result, I'm less emotional in fights. I'm less triggered by stuff out and about in the world from people that are different than me, or I feel like I'm just a better person overall the more I let that stuff out.
Well, yeah, you have healthier outlets now to do that too also.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And for every guy, there's lots of tools to get into this stuff, right? Like that whole like step away and breathe into it. That's like in the realm of like somatic meditation, which is like a science thing, like doctors recommend it. It's just like stepping away and breathing into your body and see where those feelings are. But there's also psychedelics, which are great for getting into feelings and helping cry stuff. There's like, you know, journaling and talk therapy. And it's just committing to that path of like, okay, I'm gonna polish up some of these rough edges that are affecting the people around me. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna learn about this. I'm gonna become a better man for my kids, for my wife, for my future partner. You know, I didn't want my future wife to like, my future woman that I'm dating to like see me binge eating on pizza or jerking off to porn or whatever, you know. Like I need, or like chasing other women because that's my default. Any tool you can get your hands on, whether it be a men's group or otherwise, like take it, you know.
Well, yeah, we definitely want men to be able to go to locations or people or things that are going to be healthy ways for them to handle their situations.
Mm-hmm.
And men's group sounds like it's definitely one of those places. Where can they find out more about you in the men's group?
Yeah, great question, man. And coaching is great, Harry. Harry, I know you do some coaching. Like that's fantastic too. Like I worked with a lot of coaches and stuff, and listening to podcasts, subscribing to. It's the repeat, you know, getting the repeated exposure to this stuff can help. So definitely subscribe to Harry's stuff. first and foremost. But also, like, yeah, mensgroup.com. That's where you can find me hanging out. I'm in the community hanging out a lot. I'm on some of the calls where we have a lot of different facilitators now, and we offer free men's groups, so you can go check it out. We have a couple going on a week where you can just tune in and see what an online men's group is like, and it follows that same format we talked about, where guys just get to say, hey, this is what's going on in my life. Here's the topic I like to get into, or nothing at all. And so those are really popular. We got 3 or 4 of them a week at all different time zones, and you can just tune on and see how it feels for you. We also have a free discussion community you can hop into that and see how guys are talking. So yeah, just check us out over at mensgroup.com. I'd love to have any guys that feel like they want to talk about stuff and they can't, or they're going through a challenging time and they don't have anybody who can relate, or they just want more social time with the guys, like, to give something like that a shot, whether it's ours or another one out there. There's lots of men's groups out there.
Check out Sean's men's group at mensgroup.com. Pretty simple to remember. And yeah, you can go to my website, introvertdatingsuccess.com. I got ebooks, audiobooks, programs, all designed to help you learn how to date as your introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. Sean, thank you so much for coming on to the show today. You provided a lot of great value that I'm sure the men that are listening appreciate.
That's awesome, man. Harry, keep doing what you're doing. We need more stuff like this in the world, especially for us introverts. So I appreciate it, man.
And we will check back with you guys on another show. So be sure to check out my YouTube page, youtube.com/Harry Wilmington. Also, you can find this podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, basically where podcasts are. So that's all for today's show. I'm Harry Wilmington, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.